3, that's probably too loud. Okay, so just like the other molecules moving, gases do the same thing. Okay, but for life that needs a lot of water and has a lot of water in our cells, and like think about vertebrates. Well, all organisms originally came from ancestors that were in the water. So what the deal is then is the organisms are better able to take in gases that are dissolved in water. So fish, they're still in the water. They have special organs for collecting the gases that are dissolved in the water. We, however, have gases that are just in this air. It's a dry environment. But our tissues are all wet. So we need to get the gases in water droplets. Then they can diffuse into our cells, okay? So here we've had this great adaptation of moving onto land, but we still have our historical baggage, our historical adaptations that then have to be adjusted for a new environment. It's pretty awesome when you think about it. So again, we're talking about cellular respiration right now, specifically from our point of view. So we need what gas? Oxygen. And then we release what? Carbon dioxide, exactly. So then, like I said, it has to be dissolved in water, and it's diffusion. We get our gases through diffusion. So this is a reminder, because it's been some days since we had this first part, is diffusion passive transport or active transport? Does it require energy? Passive transport, does it require energy? Does diffusion require energy? No. It's just from the random movement of molecules. Remember, things go from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. That's passive transport. Also, that same theme that whenever we need stuff, it's best if we have a lot of surface area so we could get it quickly, right? We could get it more efficient. If you remember the finger-like projections, what were those things called from digestive? The villi. And what organ are the villi in? Which intestines? Small, the ones that are absorbing those nutrients. The nutrients are being moved in, again, surface area. So you have the same thing here. We need the surface area for the gas exchange to be highly efficient. So when you look at gills here, you could see, and you might not think about it at first when you're looking at it, but here's an illustration. You have 4 layers of gills for this particular fish, and then when you break down one of the layers, you see that there are also 4 layers within each layer. Then you also see that within each layer you have a bunch of gill filaments. And the gill filaments, again, have those capillaries because we need the gas where? In the blood cells. So then the blood cells go out on their trek, delivering it to all the cells they need. And just when they're moving around, if that blood cell's packed with oxygen and it comes really close to a cell that doesn't have much oxygen, the oxygen just moves right out because the molecules are moving around and that randomness, and they diffuse into cells that need it. So it's kind of magical in ways because it doesn't take any energy. But it's just the form and function. Okay, now land, like I said a minute ago, we have to get the oxygen into water droplets before we can use it. So, and then at the same time, being in this dry environment, these organisms always have to fight being dehydrated, right? Can you imagine? Because we're full of water, so we need to conserve water as much as possible in this land, in this dry environment. So we're at odds. We need to exchange things, but we also need to conserve water. So when you're breathing, do you guys lose water? Yeah, you can feel it. You know, somebody sneezes on you, coughs on you, you're like, ew, gross. Okay, so we have to then constantly get more water, but it's best if we're as efficient as possible with our water too. And this goes for all land organisms. Don't forget about the plants also. And again, that's surface area stuff. So the simplest animals here that live on land, some examples here are worms. Flatworms, we actually have some in the back aquarium. You can check them out and find them. They hide pretty good. They were in a jar for several weeks up here before we decided to give them a better habitat back there. Their gas exchange is happening right through their skin cells. They're in a very moist environment. Actually, planaria are more often completely submerged, but they will climb out too, and if the area gets dried out of water underneath rocks, kind of like earthworms, as long as it stays moist, they can survive there a little bit. Like frogs also need to stay in a moist environment. But frogs are dealing a little bit better with the land because they also have what? Lungs. They also have lungs too, but their skin is very porous. Okay, and then the earthworms. Okay, they need to be in that moist soil for gas exchange, and they don't want to dry out. Okay, then we get some things that are more adapted to this land environment. And first off, insects, arthropods, can't breathe through their skin because they have an exoskeleton, right? So they have some more complex structures. They call them air sacs. What do they remind you of? Lungs. And do they just have one or two? No, they have a bunch because of surface area, right? To get the gas they need a good amount of them. And then let's go more advanced. Well, maybe not advanced, more complex here to organisms that have lungs. So lungs have alveoli. This is because of the surface area. We want lots of areas for the gas exchange to come in contact with the blood supply, just like on the gills. And you can see on this picture all the little vesicles, right? They're called capillaries. Those are the smallest blood vessels we have. So therefore the cells are coming in contact right next to where the oxygen is inside these sacs called alveoli. It reminds me of grape clusters. Your lungs are not hollow sacs. They are dense. They're full of all these individual sphere sacs, and it doesn't look kind of like a grape cluster. And they have all this branching out. Again, why? Why do we have all these little surface area? And you can see how the capillaries are really close so they can exchange. Okay? Now, your lungs are very fragile. So let's try a little bit of breathing here, actually, for a second. Okay, so if you wanted to pause and breathe at home, if you're listening to this silly thing at home, go for it. Yes. Okay, did I miss turgor on a page before this? Did we talk about turgor? Did I skip it or did we talk about it? Okay, good. Yeah, with the plant cells wanting water to come in, get that pressure up and all that. Oh, you guys are fibbing to me. It's your vocab word. Okay, cuticle. Anyway, not your nail cuticle, even though your cuticle is a covering there where your nail is being formed and stuff, and it is sensitive, your cuticle, but plants have a cuticle that's a little bit different. It's made out of waxy material, and this is about conserving what? Water. So we have a plant, and I've been really bad to those plants back there. I need to see if we can save any of them. One of them has a nice waxy coat. The one inside the terrarium you can feel is too, but there was another one down there that was even waxier. Cactus. Some of the cactus have a waxy coat. A lot of them do. And it's all about them being waterproof. If they're kind of waterproof, they're going to keep the water from escaping. We have oils in our skin that help us do that. I mean, we're kind of waterproof, right? We're walking out in the rain. Yeah, it gets on us. It beads up on us. It doesn't just go straight into our cells. If you're soaking in it, though, some osmosis can be occurring, right? You get all pruny in the bathtub and things like that. But this oil is helping you guys conserve water, not lose water easily. And the plants have those cuticles. Okay, plants have another cool adaptation or organ or structure. Maybe I should call it structure. It's made of two cells called the stomate. I'll show you a picture in a second. This is their little pores that they can open and close for gas exchange. And because they don't want to lose water, the stomates are found underneath leaves. Sometimes they do get on the tops of leaves, depending on the species of the plant. But most plants have those openings underneath their leaves. Does that make some sense? If they had them on top of the leaves and the sun shining right on top of them, do you think they would lose more water when they're breathing? Yeah, same thing. It's like if you opened your mouth to the sun, wouldn't take very long, right? If you're standing up there and the sun is hitting that opening, you're losing a lot of water through evaporation, right? Now, this leads us to transpiration. So transpiration is the process of moving water through the plants. Now think back. You remember the water cycle when you were a little kid? Maybe you worked on the water cycle even in kindergarten, right? Do you remember? What are those key words? What are those words in the water cycle? Okay, yeah, transpiration is in there. This is normally the one that is forgot, right? We got evaporation, precipitation, condensation. I'm probably missing one. But transpiration is the movement of water through what? Plants. Because plants are moving water from the ground, right, through their roots. Now, do plants have muscles? No. So they are not pumping water into them. So this is what's really cool. Do you remember how water molecules have cohesion? What's that mean? They stick together. So when a plant is working efficiently, they have columns of water molecules through their vascular tissue. And every time a water molecule evaporates off the surface of a leaf or out the stomata, it has made a suction, so that evaporation then moves the whole column up a little bit of space, and the water that was right at the root got pulled in to the vascular tissues at the root. Kind of like a straw, even though you're sucking a straw. But have you ever seen those little capillary tubes? Have you guys ever had where they prick your blood and they take the little glass tube and they put it to your blood drop, and the blood goes right up the tube? That didn't take any energy. That was just cohesion between your blood molecules, because your blood molecules are mostly water, right? And water is attracted to water. Yes? Exactly. And it wick, they call that wicking. So yeah, and you guys see it with paper towels too. You put a paper towel on the edge of the water, right? And it moves right up through that whole paper towel, right? That's because the same thing. So the same thing is occurring in the plant, into the plant cells, the plant tissues, and all the water just keeps this nice column of going through. So do you see though how there's a lot of water needs to be evaporating off of plants to keep the water coming up and moving through the plant, so all the cells can get the water they need. So it's this system. But at the same time, the plant doesn't want to dry out, like my poor plants in the back, right? So it's a tight balance. Keep the water moving, but don't run out of water. Because if it runs out on the bottom, is that a problem? Okay. So then the stomates can open and close. If they want to save water, they close. If they need to breathe, they open. Okay. Some plants that are in dry environments will only breathe at night. Night, they're going to lose less water. Right? So check it out. There's actually two cells. Can you see the little division line there? And this is straight out of your book. So this is a cell, this is a cell. And through osmosis, when it plumps up, that makes it plump up, and the opening, the gap widens. Do you see that? So now the stomate is open. Here, through an active transport system, the water gets drained out. The cell shrinks, and then it falls in on itself, and that closes the stomate. So pretty awesome how it opens its pores, basically, right, for gas exchange. And again, there's that balance between water loss. Okay, so now paramecium, this is a single-celled organism. This is the Protista kingdom. It's animal-like. There is no cell wall to support it, and it lives in a freshwater environment. So you can see how it's so packed with stuff. So the water is going to move into the cell or out of the cell. So it's a freshwater organism, not a bunch of salts dissolved in this water. We probably have some in these tanks swimming around right now. So where is there a higher water concentration? In the cell or out of the cell? Out of the cell. The water's going to move from a high concentration to a low concentration. Is the water going to come in the cell or out of the cell? In. Is this going to be a problem for the paramecium? Yes, and I'll show you a video on it later, but this is a contractile vacuole. It absorbs the extra water, and this is active transport, and it squishes down, and it squeezes the water out of its membrane. It kind of reminds me of like if you have a hole in a boat, and you keep bailing the water out. That's what the paramecium has to do to keep from bursting. So there's all these different adaptations. Now we get to a very important vocab word, homeostasis.
How does it do that? Like,
ATP molecules. It's like a muscle in ways. So that it contracts on itself. And it's right next to, it's just like if you were, you know those squishy balls, right, that are made out of material? If you squid, right, they don't drip. If they have the right amount of water, those squishy balls don't, you know, the material ones that you beam your siblings in the head and friends in swimming pools, right? So you can have the right amount of water in there when it's all nice and plump and it's not dripping, right? Not, or barely, right? And then you squish it. That's what they're doing. That's like a little contractile vacuole. And they have more than one. That picture only shows one. Okay, this leads us to this very important vocab word. What does homeo mean or homo mean? Same. Same. Okay? Homeostasis. Stasis is also means same. It's kind of redundant. Where there's not a lot of change. You're in stasis. So this is where the stuff we need has to stay in homeostasis. We need the right amount of water. We need to be the right temperature, right? We need the right amount of sugar, or we have diabetes, right, in our blood. So homeostasis is the fact and the process of keeping us all in balance of what we need. So, and if we're not kept in balance, we're going to be sick. It could even be a whole disease. Okay, so hydra is the simplest. Sponges and hydra are the simplest animals that we have. And they're in a wet environment, so their exchange is going just straight through their cells. No fancy organs to help them with a lot of the getting rid of, now join me, I'm almost done, you guys. Getting rid of their ammonia, like we have to use our whole urinary system, our kidneys, our bladder to get rid of it. They don't. They can just push this out into the water environment from their cells. But then, like this says here, mammals, fish, amphibians excrete the nitrogen waste chiefly as urea. So this nitrogen waste product, we dissolve it in water and we get rid of it, like urine. Does this use up water? Yes. So this is not very efficient in a desert situation. So things that are more adapted to even drier areas, like some birds, lizards, they actually make it a soluble product, and then actually it's kind of like a salt-looking thing, and it doesn't hurt them as a solid. And then they can blow it out their nostrils. There's even some plants that excrete. You see little salt things on the edge of plants sometimes that live near the ocean. Mm-hmm. I think that is close. And the same thing, well, and there's also calcium deposits, too, in there. Yeah. So it depends what they're eating, the organism, right, for what this stuff's going to look like also. Okay, so then we get to the kidneys. So the kidneys are the main organ, and I want to stop there.